What's up, Paper Gang? My name is Paper Yugioh, and welcome back to another interview on the channel. Today, guys, I have a very, very special guest with me today. You know him from his YouTube channel, YACINE656. He is a wonderful man who educates the masses on all things Yu-Gi-Oh! Here with me today, YACINE. How are you doing today, my friend?
Yo, my man, I'm doing really well. How about you, man?
I'm doing so great, dude. Very blessed to have you with me today and super thankful. And right off the bat, I just want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Imperial Gaming Collectibles. And having said that, I do have a special gift for you today, my friend. Courtesy of Imperial Gaming Collectibles, I'm going to be sending you one of our playmats. Courtesy of my sponsor, just for you. You're free to do whatever you want to do with it. Give it away on your channel. Keep it for yourself. That is for you, my friend.
That's actually sick. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. I don't deserve it, though. It's my pleasure, by the way, for the podcast. Thank you for having me in here.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. And yeah, you are deserving of all the love and all the grace, and it's my pleasure and our pleasure at Imperial Gaming Collectibles to give that to you.
You as well, man.
Thank you so much, man. So first off, my first question is, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you are here to do today.
So my name is Yacine Sahli. I'm 25 years old. I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In like, I think it was 2002. I forgot like the actual real release date of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the TCG. But basically, I obviously wasn't playing seriously at all. Even when the game actually became somewhat competitive with, you know, gold format and stuff like that, I actually somewhat knew what the top meta cards were. Like, I was fully conscious of the fact that, you know, Air Knight Parshath was really good, DD Word Lady was really good, Scapegoat was really good, etc. Like, I knew what, you know, meta actually meant. And I actually started reading magazines of competitive decks and competitive, like, tournaments of, I think it was Tilidad, the real first format that actually almost looked into somewhat details. So I knew that that was like the first almost like a massive pay-to-win deck. Because like you really needed like as many Dark Arm Dragons as you possibly could get your hands on. And then eventually I really wanted to finally play a regional for the first time in my life. So I think in 2014, I started picking up the game again because I played with a lot of like on and off breaks. And in 2014, I came back to the game with the last deck that I loved as a kid, and that was Cyber Dragon, because the final anime that I watched when I was a kid was Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and I just loved Zane Tuesday. A little bit after Gold format, Cyber Dragon was like a really, really good card. It completely revolutionized Yu-Gi-Oh! It was like the very first card that had like over 1900 attack, you know, better than Vorst Raider, that you could simply just special summon just like that, and you still had your normal summon. I was like, what? That's like completely unfair. So, sick, man. And then when you look at the other cards, like Power Bond, freaking Limiter Removal, all those cards, you're like, bro, this deck is sick, man. And in 2014, when I came back, what a coincidence. It was also the year of release of the Structure deck. So I got 3 of the Structure deck the day of the release, and I started playing it at locals, and my very first locals of my entire life, I got 2nd place, and playing against like real decks, like Shoutout and like completely legit stuff. So I was like super motivated. I was like, you know what? I really want to make this deck as competitive as possible and make it my main deck. But obviously, I'm not going to use it like as an excuse to like avoid playing other decks, because I have to play the other decks if I want to learn how to play my own deck, because I need to learn what their weaknesses are so I can actually make it so my deck can actually, you know, beat them where they are the most vulnerable. So that's the reason why I really wanted to master Cyber Dragon as much as possible. In 2016, that was the format with ABC. That was the format with also Cosmo as well. So Chimera Fortress Dragon was a big thing. And Cyber Dragon was like such a motivating deck to play back then. And I actually started having even more faith right after that. In like 2018, when the new support came out in Cybernetic Horizon. And finally in 2019... that was the year where I actually brought Cyber Dragon. Well, actually, I brought Cyber Dragon in my first YCS in 2018, YCS Columbus, but I didn't do well. And 2019, I was like, I ended up with like a pretty good score. I was like 42nd in the YCS, but the YCS right after, I actually learned from my errors, and I fixed everything, and I actually got top 8. So obviously, but that wasn't my first YCS top. That was my second, because the first one was with a complete different deck. But yeah, so Cyber Dragon, always the deck that probably defines me the most. It's like the most iconic thing for me, and that's probably the number one thing that you have to know about me. But for like the YouTube game, I don't know, YouTube is kind of something that I started doing because I was always in like ETPat's Shadow. That's the real name of Team Samurai X1. So I was always like helping him out to make YouTube videos. And eventually I was just like, you know what? I don't want to just help you out. I want to help you out and do my own thing. And that's why I started making my own YouTube channel. Even though I actually had this YouTube channel for like several years. I started in like 2008, but I wasn't doing Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Yeah, once I actually did start doing Yu-Gi-Oh videos, that was when I started having the motivation to consistently upload every single day.
That's awesome, man. And you know that you touched on a lot of things that that we were going to get into a little later in the interview as well. But yeah, I can tell you personally, as a Salamangreat X player, I've been contact fused more than one time. So your deck is not very fun for me to play against in those past years. But thank you so much for delving into kind of your history in Yu-Gi-Oh and you know, touching on Team Samurai X1, because I know he was a big influence for you, and how much you've helped him, because he does shout you out in like a lot of his videos and say, you know, thank you so much for YACINE for helping me out with this combo. And you know, it just helps the viewers kind of delve into what goes into the thought process behind making these videos. And that's not to say he's not a great player, because he is a great player. He won the world championship in the first remote duel world championship when that first started, so that was amazing. And he actually beat Cody Angeloff, if I'm not mistaken, right? In the finals. Yeah. Thank you so much for continuing your passion since 2008 and just bringing so much content to the game. Even though you didn't start with Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, you're doing a great service to the player base right now. And I think that's one of the reasons I decided to reach out to you. So before we get started, are there actually any shout outs that you'd like to give?
Just all my friends. I mean, the main ones are Simon Saint-Amour, Jesse Flores, and Itipat Aruna Visiri, which is Team Samurai X1.
Right. First question for you would be, over the course of your YouTube career, you know, you've done a really great job. You've garnered over 30,000 subscribers, and I can tell you just from watching your videos and reading the comments, they are very dedicated to watching your videos and giving you feedback, which I think is one of the best things that we can have as content creators, right? So you focus on education in your videos. Mostly you focus on combo tutorials, talking about the future metagame, the current metagame. So I'm just curious, what inspires you to have that focus on education, and what made you decide to, you know, start producing that type of content?
I can't really do entertainment like Milano does, so the only thing that's left for me would be education. So I love developing combos, and exactly as you said, I also like sharing it with other people so I can have like feedback and actually improve them. So it's the kind of like win-win situation in a way. And obviously if I can make, you know, preferably a living off of YouTube off of that, that would be like insanely fantastic. And obviously at first it was almost just a dream, but you know, the dream almost becomes an ambition at some point, and you're like, oh, I think I might be able to make it. Obviously I'm like very far from, you know, the massive YouTubers that can actually allow to like quit their jobs and stuff like that. Obviously I'm I still have to work like full time if I want to, you know, live, but still it's really nice to see that YouTube can be like a nice side hustle that also doesn't force me to do like work that I don't really want to do, because those combos I would have developed them for myself anyways. So since I'm doing something for myself, might as well. And that's like the number one mentality with me. It's really just I might as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like you touched on something really important that, you know, Joe Bogley actually talked about in my interview with him, was that it's basically all about enjoying the process, right? Because at the end of the day, part of the reason you're making your videos is for you, because you enjoy the process. And I think that's the reason that people like you are seeing so much success, even if it's at a, you know, not a large scale as someone like Team Sam X1 at the moment. You have that ambition, you have that drive, you're enjoying what you're doing, so the only way that you can go from here is up. So that's something that I really appreciate. That's something that I try to focus on as well. And yeah, I pretty much started the same way. I was like, I might as well start making videos. I enjoy doing it, and I love Yu-Gi-Oh, so I might as well. My next question for you, I checked out quite a few of your videos, as I mentioned before, and I've heard, you know, you give a lot of your opinions on the metagame. So I'm curious, just for my viewers who maybe haven't checked you out or haven't seen those videos, like, what are some of your thoughts on the current metagame, and what are some of the things that we can see happen on the upcoming ban list?
Like, my thoughts are not like to be worshipped or anything, especially since, first of all, I'm pretty like average when it comes to, you know, my value in whatever the community or whatever. So me being a YouTuber doesn't make anything that I say necessarily better than like a non-YouTuber that has just as much knowledge as I do. So like you could ask the same thing to like any decent player at your locals, and the value in their like answer would be the same. But another thing to keep into consideration is the fact that I have not played super seriously since the lockdown because my locals went bankrupt. So even if I wanted to play, I couldn't. And that last YCS, I just couldn't go because of final exams. And now, you know, if I still want to answer that question, I would say I don't like this format at all. I think there are so many issues. Like the fact that we keep on having just weak, low-impact ban lists. Obviously, the last ban list was not that bad. But the main issue that I really have is that when there is some... I don't know if I can really say that, because the newer deck actually did have some form of impact, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that the older decks are going to stop seeing play. So now you have to focus on beating way too many decks to the point where it becomes basically impossible. And if you're playing something that isn't meta, you're like already disqualified. Whereas like I remember clearly, I used to play in formats where rogue decks could actually be insanely good, and you didn't have to rely on being like extremely lucky. Whereas now, if you're playing like a rogue deck, you're gonna have to be basically winning the lottery if you want to win like a freaking 14-round tournament or something like that. Consistently playing against decks that can full combo with one card and play like 20 hand traps. It's actually ridiculous because average decks can't do that.
There's a couple things there. You touched on something really important, is the whole concept of celebrity and fame is something that's a figment of our imaginations, right? So, just for my viewers and for you as well, I value your opinion just as much as I would value any other duelist's opinion when it comes to the ban list or what you think about the current metagame. And I think that you do have insight to some degree because you do this semi-professionally, because you are creating content about it. So it's something that you enjoy doing, and that's why I value your opinion. But that's not to say that I don't value someone else's opinion just as much. We are all equals on this earth. We all walk the earth together, and part of what's so great about the Yu-Gi-Oh community is that we are all, for the most part, right, I could say, is that the majority of duelists I meet are trying to make other duelists better, not worse. So especially at a local level, right? Like when you play in locals, you're trying to help your opponent because they're your friend and you want to see them succeed. And I think that's one of the greatest things about education, and I'm glad that you touched on that. So, but yeah, the format's kind of crazy, is it not?
Yeah, it's for me, it's just not fun at all. Especially since, I don't know, I'm not trying to be biased necessarily, but I want to say a format that is healthy would be a format where my deck, Cyber Dragon traps very specifically with 0 hand traps and 0 like unfair shenanigans, is considered a decent deck. If it's not, it's because the format is so ridiculously fast that you can't afford to play, a control deck that plays 0 hand traps. If you're playing a control deck, it has to play 20 billion hand traps, or it has to be playing very not fun floodgates that make you insta-win going first. So there's always like, I don't know, just some poison in every single deck, I want to say. Even if you're not even playing hand traps, and if you're not playing a combo deck, doesn't mean that your deck is any healthier than the other decks.
So what do you think, based on that answer, like what are some of the things that Konami can do to kind of like mitigate that toxicity in the format?
I somewhat explained it in my Master Duel video that I uploaded, I think 2 days ago, but that was kind of specific for Master Duel. So the answer that I would give you for that would be just not really give us rotation formats where sometimes we have like one tier 0 format and then like triangular formats and stuff like that, because honestly, tier 0 formats make way too many people unhappy, even though it makes a lot of competitive players happy because you know what to expect. There's no surprise factor. So if you deck build very specifically to beat that one deck, you might have a pretty big edge. But triangular formats are pretty trash. Everybody hates them. Like quite literally, I can't think of anyone on Earth who loves triangular formats. The last one that I could think of was the Cosmo, Monarch, and Burning Abyss. That was not pleasant at all, because there was like a good argument for pretty much all three, except maybe Cosmo, that was like the worst. But still, Burning Abyss and Monarchs, I don't know, even if you were like a very good Burning Abyss player, if you got sacked by Monarch that actually didn't brick, shockingly enough, well, you lost. To be fair, people have different preferences, so some people might actually want like those formats that we have right now, where there are like 20 billion decks with like mad variety and stuff like that. And then there are some other competitive players like myself who actually don't like a surplus of variety, because, like I said, it means that you're going to have to deck build for so many decks that it makes it so you can never be mathematically correct with your ratios. Because if you say, okay, you're going to have to make concessions, because let's just say that a card like Winda exists. You can't afford to respect Winda and respect, other kinds of floodgates. You're gonna have to compromise somewhere, and this is the issue with like way too much variety. So I don't know. There's no solution, honestly. It's a problem, but we have no solution at the end of the day because people all want different things.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things that my teammates and I and the people that I play against in locals talk about all the time is obviously Max C, right? Do you think that's something that would help or hurt a format like this one?
It's like such a good question, but for me to answer this in like a podcast would be like a 7-hour long discussion because right. There are so many points about Max C that are very interesting. Like it's that kind of card that has both pros and cons. You just have to be like aware to, you have to be like awake enough to realize which ones actually weight the more. Like obviously if Max C always gets negated exactly like Joshua Schmidt, then it doesn't really have a true impact and it just becomes more of a Saki card. And obviously if Max C is at 1, then everybody's a loser. It literally becomes Lottery City. So the real argument would be 0 Max C against 3 Max C. But then we're starting to look at the other variables, like, are we playing in degenerate formats where the average combo decks makes like 20 negates and also draws cards going first? Because Maxi existing into the game doesn't necessarily mean that the going second player has like a little bit of a balancing advantage for him, because the going second player might not draw Maxi, and then the going first player might actually draw Maxi in like his combo. So that was the issue that we had during Fusion Substitute Zodiac. Like Maxi wasn't making the game better because if you didn't draw Maxi, which was, a high likelihood because it was, I think, at 2 or 1, the going first player was always drawing Maxi because the actual combo was drawing like 7 cards with Fusion Substitute. So Maxi was making the player who lost the dice roll lose even more. So it's an extremely format dependent card, and it has the potential to shine in formats that aren't, decided in turn 1. So let's say a Sky Striker heavy format, that one would be very healthy with Maxi because you don't actually cry when you get Maxied because you can afford to like only special summon once, maybe twice, depends on the situation. But obviously Maxi in a format with like Adamancipator, Drytron and stuff like that, you're not in a good mood if you get Maxied realistically because you don't do anything. You basically have to either pass, or if you're lucky enough, you draw the out, and it's always like lose-lose. So it doesn't even promote back and forth, that's my real argument. So basically Maxi can come back to 3 if it exists in a back and forth environment, but if we keep on having those formats that we have right now, where turn 1 means more than everything else, then Maxi has to stay banned.
I'm going to be honest, I didn't really consider the fact that you have to really take into contention the environment that Maxi exists in, right? And you kind of convinced me to think about that a little bit more, because at 0 or 3, essentially it's the same format. It's just, if it's a format where you're summoning multiple times and you have to do that in order to get your combo off, well, if you get Maxied, the game is pretty much over, right? So it doesn't solve any problems, as opposed to in a Striker format, like you said, you're only summoning one time, or you can get Maxied on Ray, tag it out, you're good. So yeah, it's basically like, I really like that explanation. Thanks for saying that, and it's kind of making me think about my personal opinions about Maxi a little bit more. So I appreciate that. And one place that we do see Maxi in is Master Duel, and like you said, you just you released your ban list video about that, and I know that you absolutely eviscerated that ban list, and rightfully so. It really didn't solve any of the issues that Master Duel is facing right now. Like, how come Conquistador is at 1, but Rongo and VFD are still at 3? So it's like, that's another question I have for you. It's a good segue. So with Master Duel, I feel like Konami might have given that to us as a way to kind of mitigate our remote situation that we have ever since the pandemic started, and give players a way to play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But how does Master Duel now affect Yu-Gi-Oh going forward, and what does the future of Master Duel look like for us?
The answer that I would have to give you right now would be so much different than the answer that I had planned out in my head on initially back the release, because of so many things. First of all, I had no idea that Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel would become an official, game for World Championships. Like, you can actually go to, like, Worlds for Master Duel, just like you can for Duel Links. So, in a way, Master Duel isn't something that is even connected to the real main Yu-Gi-Oh game anymore, like OCG and TCG. It's almost become its own spin-off, because now we're living in, like, a Master Duel format where it doesn't represent anything. Like, we have VFD, which exists nowhere. Like, nobody wants VFD because it does, like, playing Master Duel doesn't make you improve either in the OCG or TCG. So, like, if you're playing Virtual World, you're not really playing, you know, any real Virtual World deck. So, Master Duel feels like a waste of time right now, because what are you playing it for? Like, there's no incentive. You're really, if you're playing it for fun, then go for it. I'll never stop people from having fun. But if you're, you know, if you're playing with a goal, what is your goal? That's my real question. Obviously, I haven't asked enough people, because everybody that I talked to about concerning Master Duel told me that, you know, they quit. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to a lot of players. Like, I know I personally started playing Master Duel right when it came out on release, and I was all about it. I was playing it for hours and hours, as I'm sure many of my viewers were, but it does really feel like there isn't enough of an incentive for me to continue playing. I mean, when you talk to people about how they can improve the incentive program in Master Duel, the first thing we think of is more gems, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm getting all these gems to build more decks to do what?
To do what exactly? Now, it's just a circle. Like, sure, you get gems, but then what do you do with them? Buy more decks. What are you doing them? What are you doing with them? Play more games. Sure, but are you actually enjoying it? The answer is yes, then whatever. The answer is no, then what are you doing?
Right. Do you have any opinions on what Konami could do to incentivize players to play Master Duel, or what they could do to make it more competitive?
YCS Master Duels. Stuff like that. Regional Master Duel. Basically, just treat it the same way you would treat TCG, with actual real rewards. And yeah, I mean, a ladder, like a leaderboard, you rather, just like Dueling Book, stuff like that. Because right now, Platinum 1 is irrelevant. Nobody cares if you're Platinum 1, because pretty much anyone can get there. I mean, bots are having, you know, a lot of wins if they're playing like DD Dynamite BS. So, yeah, no, just winning doesn't mean anything in Master Duel anymore. So yeah, just actually give them a reason to try to win would be nice. So yeah, rewards in real life, I want to say. Not rewarding with gems.
Right.
We're done with that.
Yeah, clearly it's like, you know, and you know, it's reflected in the content creators who are making content for Master Duel, because that's what I started doing, until I got to a point where I was like, okay, what do I do now? Because I've built a deck, I've showcased my competitive play, I've gotten to Platinum 1, and now I feel like the game is kind of over. It's like, you just beat the game, but did you really beat the game? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like an in-between, and like, there's just not enough. Like, there's not enough news, there's not enough excitement around it right now. But I think that it has a really good base right now, it has a really good shell, and Konami can do a lot with it. So, like, having said that, do you think that it's something that we could see still be a mainstay in the Yu-Gi-Oh realm for many years to come?
I'm actually so glad that you finally said that, because most people, when they judge Master Duel, they only judge by what it currently offers, but not according to, like, you know, the fundamentals of Master Duel. So, like, the platform is good. It has a lot of potential. Obviously, the graphics are pretty nice. Obviously, there are not a lot of cards, but still, that's a minor issue that can easily be fixed. So, I want to say the majority of the problems with Master Duel are very small and can easily be fixed. It's just, why is Konami not even trying to put in the effort is the main issue that I have.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks so much for that great breakdown. That was very informative. I appreciate that. My next question for you is, I'm curious, like, who are some of your biggest influencers, you know, that helped you decide that you wanted to get into this? Like, is there anyone in the Yu-Gi-Oh community that you really look up to, or just in general that you look up to, that you draw inspiration from, and who are they and why?
Not gonna lie, I don't really have any, like, inspirations in a way, people that I look up to, because I don't really want to compare myself to others. I want to compare myself to myself, basically be just competitive only with myself, because otherwise, it's either gonna make me jealous or make me feel like superior, arrogant. So, I don't, it's not necessarily a bad thing if you do it, like, moderately, but I don't trust myself to compare myself to others, so I want to say right now, I don't even care about what other people are doing. I'm just doing my own thing. However, if I had to give you an answer, I would have to say the person I admire the most in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community by far would be Jesse Cotton, because he's actually quite unique. He's that player who's ridiculously good at the game, but he doesn't give up any of his morals to be good either. Like, he doesn't cheat at all. He's super clean. He lets people take back everything. He's incredibly just a nice person to be around, regardless of who you are. It's pretty unique to see, because in very competitive games, you see a lot of people at the top level usually being very arrogant, and they kind of try to get away with cheating. They just do it in a slick way, and we don't really see it, but Jesse is not like that, so...
I would love to delve into that a little bit more, if that's okay with you. Do you think that Yu-Gi-Oh does have a cheating problem?
Good question. The thing is, I don't have enough information to give you, like, I don't really know how to say it, but, like, a numerical, like, answer to that in terms of, like, statistics, but my theory, and that's just, like, a theory, not even, like, a real opinion, is that the cheating issue never really changed drastically with Remote Duel. The only thing that changed was the fact that it became easier to, like, it became harder to, like, spot them, so it became easier for people to cheat, so it made them feel, like, more comfortable doing it. And obviously, there was that one guy with, like, you know, the columns and stuff like that, saying, like, no, I didn't change it and everything. That's pretty big. And obviously, people, you know, having side decks of, like, 10 billion. Basically, we have to, like, trust you at this point, but I'm not gonna be out there saying, like, oh, I trust no humans on Earth, whatever. But it's so easy to cheat in Remote Duel. It's actually ridiculous. Oh my god. It's such a joke. Like, there's a way right now that anyone in the entire planet can do with no practice that can guarantee you to draw at least one hand shot per hand. And it takes 2 seconds. It's just mana weaving. Very easy to do. So, yeah, it's a problem, but I don't know necessarily if, like, it became worse over time. That's the only thing. But yeah.
I think we can say, you know, as you mentioned, there is no real quantifiable way to give an accurate answer here. I think that you can probably agree with me on this, though, is the majority of the duelists that you meet do have high integrity. And you can usually count on the person that you're playing against to to respect you and to respect the game itself and to play with integrity, right? I think I basically see that at my locals. I see that at regionals. I mean, the majority of players are kind. And like you said, so you touched on one other thing, actually, that I want to ask you about, because this is something that's highly in contention, especially among my group of friends and my teammates and the people that I like to play Yu-Gi-Oh with. Is there's an argument over whether or not we should be practicing with letting people take misplays back, right? Because you said Jesse is someone who lets everyone take everything back. So when I was actually playing against Paulie Aronson, he came over to my house one day and we were just dueling together, and I made a mistake and he said, no, it's okay, you can take it back. And I said to him, well, I don't want to take it back because I want to practice playing the game correctly so that I can improve and get better in a realistic situation. So what do you think is the better way to play, and do you think that it's better that we allow people to take things back or not?
Question so much, because there are so many different answers you can actually give to this question. So first of all, let's just say, it really depends on the environment and the competitive level. So obviously, if you're like in a world championship, don't go expect that people are gonna let you take back anything. You know, you're playing worlds. You know, you're playing for like the title of world champion. However, if you're playing in like lower caliber of tournaments, then it becomes more realistic to let people take back stuff. So, honestly, if you're playing at locals and you don't want to let your opponents take back their plays, it's just because you're obsessed with winning, and I don't really get what you're trying to win, because I don't know, it's just locals. So what I really want to say is, when you're practicing for Yu-Gi-Oh, you want to play as optimally as possible, and sometimes what the top players do is that they play open hand, so they keep on going back every single time they make mistakes as well. Their opponents actually point them out, like, oh, by the way, this play wouldn't be correct, so you take it back and stuff like that. Because learning is a process involving two people. It's not just you. So if you make mistakes and you don't take them back, like, sure, it's going to put you in that position where next time you'll remember, but also taking back plays allows you to kind of see how far you would have went if you played as perfectly as possible. And that's really what I'm trying to explain right now, is that if you lost just because you made a mistake, you don't learn how that mistake would have changed the outcome of the game. You just accept the loss and move on. It's more of like a mentality thing. But if you take it back, again, it depends on the environment. I want to say in locals, or when you're just practicing with your friends, this is perfect. In regionals, YCSs, different subject. But yeah, you kind of want to try to play test, open hand and play as perfect as possible. You take it back. You also say it to your opponent, because we both want to play as perfect as possible, so we can actually figure out what line of play is always ideal to beat our other opponents that we're really competitive against.
It's really cool because this is very reminiscent of one of my favorite quotes, or one of my favorite song lyrics, really. Have you seen the movie Tarzan?
Yeah.
Okay, so Phil Collins is the artist who wrote the entire album for that movie, and in one of his songs, he has a line that is, "In learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn." So it's basically like a back and forth, right? It's I don't want to say it's the responsibility of the better player, but if we have that knowledge, I almost feel like it's our duty as a human being to impart that knowledge unto the person that we can teach, so that we can all grow together, because it doesn't make me a better person to keep that knowledge, and it doesn't make you a better person to not have that knowledge, right? So I think that was really cool that you explained it that way, and at the same time, I can also say that I think it does depend on the setting, like we keep coming back to thematically in this interview. But there's value in both schools of thought, right? There's value in taking it back in certain scenarios, and there's values in letting it slide in other scenarios, right? So another question I have for you is, that our format right now is kind of an amalgamation format, right? Where we're kind of like jamming different engines into bigger decks. Like we're seeing a resurgence of 60 card decks, even in a format where That Grass Looks Greener is not in the format. So I want to know your opinions on, 40 versus 60 card decks. Is there value in playing a 60 card deck? What are just some of your general opinions, and how has it affected this metagame so far?
So again, another pretty good question, but that one, I think the answer is a little more simple. The main reason why people play 60 card decks is because they want to increase their option without necessarily increasing the amount of bad commitment cards that they're going to be drawing. So yeah, you have like more options because you play more engines, but at the same time, those really bad cards like those Garnets and Taketumborgs, you're not going to see them super often if you play 60. So that's the really big advantage. Like in Noble 40 cards, you're going to see those equip spells super often. If you play 60, then you're going to see them less often if you play the same number, except if you obviously multiplied by 1.5. But your combo cards, if you're just adding combo cards, then your consistency is not dropping. So if anything, your consistency is increasing. The one drawback of 60 cards would be that your side deck, you see it less often. So that's like the disadvantage that you have post game 1. Apart from that, because of the fact that That Grass Looks Greener is banned, I don't have much to say about 60 card decks anymore. It's really just aggressive combo decks, but it's not the same as before, where a 60 card deck was a 60 card deck because it resolved that one spell card which mailed 20 cards. So things have changed.
Touching on the side deck, I'm glad you brought up the side deck, because I'm not sure, you said you watched some of Simo's content, right?
To be completely honest with you, I don't watch like Yu-Gi-Oh YouTube videos. My hobby is like something completely different.
What is it?
No, I just watch like, podcast of just about everything, conversations and stuff like that people have, science, and I binge watch a lot of series on Netflix and Amazon Prime.
There's one scientist that I'm actually watching right now on YouTube. I'm starting to get into his videos. Have you heard of Veritasium?
No, send it to me.
He delves into all these kind of like mysterious different ways that scientific equations kind of factor into the real world, and I think it's something that you would really be interested in. But yeah, circling, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. Circling back to the side deck, I mentioned Simo because I remember seeing in one of his videos that he talked about how it's incredibly important to side and to know how to side against the current meta, and that brings me back to something you said earlier in the interview when you said you want to have a stronghold and know how to play all the different decks in the meta, so you know the different choke points and what cards hurt those decks so that you can incorporate those cards into your playstyle. So you really do play more games in the side deck than you do in the main deck, right? Because there's games 2 and 3.
50 to 67% of your games are post game 1, because obviously it's either 1 game out of 2 if it's like a 2-0, or 2 games out of 3, so 67%.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, that's a very big point. And having said that, just based on the current meta as we're experiencing it right now, what are some of the cards in a combo deck that you should have in the side deck, and what are some of the cards for like a control style deck that you should have in the side?
So in a combo deck, you wanna not lose to hand traps post game 1, because the thing is, if you successfully do your combo that your deck already does anyways, you usually win. So you don't necessarily need to play like floodgates and stuff like that. Although sometimes we do see, you know, people citing like Gozen Match and Drytron, or, you know, Artifact Sanctum in like aggressive combo decks, or different Dimension Ground, whatever. But realistically, your deck can win without drawing them. So the main focus is countering Nibiru, hand traps, etc., stuff like that. Or if you're going second, of course, then it becomes different. It becomes back removal. Control decks, on the other hand, they have to focus on their opponent's side deck, actually. So that's actually completely different, because if you're playing a back row deck, you become scared of your opponent siding in Lightning Storm, Twin Twister, and stuff like that. So this is where Solemn Judgment, Anti-Spell, etc., those kind of cards actually become better. Anti-Spell might not be the best example, because people right now are more on Twin and Cosmic, and also evenly can be terrifying. So if you can kill a lot of birds with 1 stone, so cover a lot of ground with like 1 card, you're going to be in a better position. What I'm a big fan of, personally, are lingering cards, so even if they get hit by Twin, it doesn't matter. So like Dimensional Barrier, doesn't matter if you Twin me. I'm going to chain it, and then you can't do anything for the rest of the turn. And the beauty about Eldritch is that if all you do is just destroy my cards and you do nothing, I don't care, because they'll have graveyard effects and they refund themselves. So Eldritch is that kind of deck that has, even though it's a control deck and a trap deck, it doesn't retain the same issues that the other control decks have. So even though it still is a control deck, it doesn't follow the same set of rules, and it can afford to side deck slightly different than the other decks.
It's interesting, like two main things that you touched on there that I think are really cool about the game, right? I don't know if you remember, Twin Twister came out, if I'm not mistaken, in Monarch format.
Breakers of Shadow, that was actually Pepe format, I think. No,
Pepe format,
that was Pepe. Yeah.
So when it came out, I remember reading the card and I said, "Oh my god, this card is incredible!" Right? It was so ahead of its time, and it's like not only do you get to pop 2 back row as a quick effect, but you also get to discard a card, and you know it's just like there's so much versatility with that card. And do you agree with me that it was ahead of its time?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I 1,000,000,000%. Every single player read it, and they were like, wow, that's incredible. That kind of officially power creeps MST.
Right, absolutely. Like, I remember watching a video of all the reasons why you would play Twin Twister over MST no matter what, basically. Unless you're in a deck, basically, where you want to have those 1-for-1s, and you don't want to discard a card, then you would look to something like... Go ahead, you have something
that's
here?
Me and Fiber Dragons, because I want to pop myself. I don't want to discard a card. I want to just pop my own overflow. That's it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, those lingering effects are some things that are really cool about Yu-Gi-Oh. For example, a card like what is it? Yeah, we touched on D barrier.
90 whatever % of decks right now are playing Anaconda. Like the only exception would be Flunderies, which I don't care about. To me it sounds a little stupid. I'm kind of tired of seeing, you know, the backup plan. Oh, I get negated every single 2 seconds. It's fine. Turn 2 random monsters into like a super big problem. I'm just getting annoyed.
Right.
That's another big reason why I hate this format, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that the reason that we're able to have so many recovery plays is due to one card starters, right? Because one card in your hand does everything that you need to do, and then you still have four more to work with. So it's like, what are your opinions on one card starters, and do you think that decks should have to use at least two cards to accomplish their goal?
Okay, look. One card starters are allowed to exist if they're not degenerate. If they don't do like insane things, like Armageddon Knight with like warrior combos, hell no. That can't exist. Whereas like one card combos that do something a little cute, I'll give you that. If it's not like inherently unfair. And also if it involves bricks, then it becomes a little more reasonable. But yeah, obviously one card combos like Prank Kids, they destroy the integrity of the game, I want to say. Because it makes it so there's almost no, it becomes like a low risk, high reward kind of thing. Because it's a one card combo that doesn't even lose that much to like Valor and Imperm. You get Valor like 10 years later. Obviously, if you get Ash, then that's a different story. But yeah, preferably everything should be two card combo. Preferably every combo deck should be somewhat similar to Danger, Thunder, Crusadia, Guard Dragon, and Pendulum, as in you need your full hand. So you can't really afford the luxury of playing 12 hand traps. Because that makes it more of a mid-range deck and not a combo deck.
Yeah, and I think hand traps are something that we've been touching on a lot in this conversation, and I actually have a question about them. So I know that you're very in tune with the metagame, and I know that recently, I don't know if you've seen the trend, but there are a lot of top players that are kind of moving away from hand traps, right, and starting to play more board-breaking cards, like Droplet, like Dark Ruler, Book of Eclipse, right? And I think that both have their place in the metagame, but do you think that we're going to start to see a trend in the metagame where people are going to be switching over from the hand traps to those kind of board breaking cards?
In this current format, yeah, I think that might actually happen because Despia, realistically, your hand traps have no guarantee against the deck. So it doesn't matter if you draw Ash, if it gets negated by Crossout or Call by the Grave or Griffin Rider, then you know that you might as well just not have drawn that Ash and just have drawn like a sixth card that wouldn't have gotten negated that can actually deal with more stuff. Because trading one for one is not what we're really trying to achieve right now. Because your value going second with, one for one traders is not the best if your opponent can still stop you in their tracks. So yeah, in your tracks rather.
One of the reasons that I think people are doing this is obviously because of things like the Brave Engine, right, where people are able to put up an Omni Negate within two summons and without really giving you anything to interact with, because obviously you can Ash or Bell the Water Enchantress, but if they open the right, it's basically like, okay, you're either ogering or ashing the Fateful, or else I have an Omni Negate. So it's like there's not really that much interaction there, or it forces you to have specifically something, right? So I know in the OCG, they've already started to hit those cards, the Brave Engine, right, in Japan. Do you think that we could see the same thing happen here, or is it too early for such a thing to happen?
It is too early, but what could actually happen, that would be reasonable and completely realistic, would be Verte banned. And that would actually take care of the most annoying thing that the Brave Token engine can do for Despia, which is the backup plan of always having access to Mirror Jade, even if you didn't have Branded Fusion. So now you might actually be forced to play pure Despia.
Do you think there's ever a format that Verte can exist in a healthy manner in?
I think as soon as Verte existed... Well, hold on. Did Verte exist the same time as Dragoon?
I forget.
Either way, yeah, I mean, it's just like you take away those annoying cards, and then everything else like is pretty fair, honestly. Like even the Rainbow Neos, I don't care. But yeah, Dragoon, Phoenix Enforcer, and Mirror Jade... Nah. And also, Verte limits card design. So, if you keep it into the game, Konami, every single time they print a fusion spell card, they have to be, like, super afraid of making it, like, use materials from the deck, because then it's just gonna be abused every single time. So, they have to, like, specifically put weaknesses on those cards just because of the existence of one generic Link monster.
Card design is a concept that touches on why we see a deck like Dragon Link stay around for so long. It's because all of the dragons are so incredibly powerful that Konami really has to think before they print a card that has the dragon type, right? So it's like limiting card design, right? Talk a little bit about limiting card design and some of the cards that are out there now that limit card design.
Some of them are even worse. Oh my god. When you look at Insect, for example, you laugh because they suck. But Konami can randomly make an insect deck unfair in 2 seconds, because that would make it so Retaliating Sea searches literally anything on Earth, which is a little unfair. And if you unban Max C, then you can search Max C with Retaliating Sea. So Beat Trooper has the potential to be a tier 0 deck with the right circumstances, which is like insanity. But obviously it's far from it, but only because of circumstances. It's just because Konami is not printing good insects and not unbanning Maxi. Dragon, I definitely agree with you on that one. It's a dangerous typing to, give the player base unfair dragons. Way too many cards, like Dragon's Ravine, Hieratic Seal. Summon any dragon monster from your... Are you kidding me? How is that a fair card?
Right.
And it's like, arguably not even the best effect. Like, the quick effect non-targeting bounce is insanity.
There's a card that was actually just printed. It's that new zombie monster, the rank 8 Xyz. And when I read that card, I was like, why couldn't this just be 2 zombie monsters? Why is it 2 level 8s? Like, did they forget that all dragons are level 8?
Level 8.
It's like... Oh, and just so you know, it sends 5 cards to the graveyard. So it's, or how many?
You can most reborn one of them.
It's like, come on, Konami, what are you doing, guys? Who's in the R&D department right now? What are your thoughts on the best decks in the format right now? If you had to rank number 1, number 2, number 3, what are they and why?
I don't really have enough insight on that because I didn't playtest seriously. So anything that I say would have to come purely off of my theory and my understanding on the format and not really what I truly believe. So I guess Despia doesn't really look like an unfair deck. It looks like one of the most fair. Like when you compare it to like Degenerate, Drytron, and Adamantipator, not in the same league. And it also has consistency issues and stuff like that, so I can't realistically put Despia at number 1. It really is reminiscent to Sword Soul Tenyi. Sword Soul Tenyi was a great deck. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like unfair, unhealthy, like, oh, get this deck banned, it's so annoying. People only wanted Protoss banned. So, yeah, I don't really think I can really put Despia number 1, even the Brave build, but it would have to be either number 2 or number 3. Number 1, I just have to give it to Based. I think the deck is just way too good. And then the other ranking would probably be the Brave Prankids, because that deck is... It's again a low risk, high reward. You don't really have to play any bad cards in it. It's again it makes a lot of interruptions, and you don't have to play like 75 equip spells or garnets or Colt Wing-esque cards or Desk Bot 1 annoying cards. Obviously there's the Destiny Hero cards, but is it really the end of the world if you only play 2 bad cards in your 40 or 60 card? People are playing 60 card Prankids now. Yeah, just every single card almost is incredibly good. So yeah, Prankids, Brave, broken.
Yeah, like in that deck, you really, like as you mentioned, you don't have to play bad cards. My friends and I call it paying tolls. You really don't have to pay any tolls in that deck, right?
Yeah.
You just get to play all the cards and look, oh, here's this Link 1. It's called Meow, and it does everything you could ever want it to do, right? So it's like...
It can be a vanilla monster, and it would still be insane.
For all intents and purposes, I would say it is a vanilla monster, because no one's really using that banish effect anymore. Yeah, they're just like recycling it off of pranks. I'm almost about to wrap it up. I just want to say, if you could leave my viewers with like one final piece of advice or wisdom, and again, not to say that your wisdom is on a higher pedestal than anyone else that I would talk to, but like something that you believe in that you want to lend to my viewers, what would it say? What would it be?
Yeah, for sure. That one would come off the would come from my personal experience and what I've learned over the years. So, yeah, just don't really try to spend too much time, asking for validation for your deck list and stuff like that. Don't really try to be like part of those communities where everyone has to be like, just identical. No, try to be unique. Try to go for your own. Try to do your own thing, really, because that's what I tried to do myself. With Cyber Dragons. Obviously, I got like so much hate for doing the Cyber Dragon trap deck, but it works. So why would I stop doing it? And eventually, people are going to appreciate it. So when I started making a YouTube channel, obviously starts with hate, but then people are like, "Whoa, Cyber Dragon trap master, yo, let's go!" And people actually started really enjoying it. So yeah, just do your own thing. Do what really. Just follow your drive, honestly, and don't really hear what the negative comments of people, of other people say to you. Obviously, constructive criticism isn't negative. For me, it's like 2 completely different things. So you should listen to constructive criticism. But if people are like, "Bro, you're stupid. You play that deck, but I think it's garbage because I don't know, just because of my feelings. That doesn't work. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I really appreciate the insight, and I appreciate you sitting here with me again. I'm happy and I'm blessed to call you a friend. And again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit with me for this interview. My name is Paper Yugioh. As always, stay getting that paper, and I will see you in the next video.
Every time it go down, I'ma have to throw down. Whisper in my ear, and I'ma keep it on the low.